So last year I made a lot of Pac Man World videos, and since I finally completed them in September around that time, I thought why not make a one big compilation video. Enjoy! Pac Man is one of the most iconic video game characters of all times. Everyone and their mothers know who Pac Man is. He had a variety of games throughout the years and TV shows. But among all of them, there was only one little Pac Man series that gained a cult following. The Pac is back! No, not that one. It's Pac Man World. Now I got that song stuck in my head again. Anywho, so since they announced the remake of Pac Man World, I thought it'd be just fun to talk about my childhood games. So for the next few videos, it's going to be about the Pac Man World series with some other games in between. But with that out of the way, let's get started. So after a scrap concept trying to make Pac Man into 3D, Namco decided to work on a new Pac Man series called Pac Man World, which tried to evolve Pac Man into a 3D platformer around that time. So the game starts with Pac Man's family trying to come to Pac Man's house to celebrate his birthday, because this game is supposed to be an anniversary title for Pac Man. But anyway, so once they try to enter Pac Man's house, they've been kidnapped by the ghost. Ending things off with Pac Man finally entering his home, realizing that he's been ransacked and his wife is gone. With the only clue he has is an invitation to Ghost Island where he can meet the real Pac Man. And I've got to say real quick, this is probably the funniest thing I've ever seen in a Pac Man game. But with that out of the way, Pac Man heads off to Ghost Island.
No, you idiots! I wanted gold streamers and red balloons! The DJ stinks, the banners are crooked, and the cake should be chocolate! You're gonna ruin my party!
Boss!
What do you want?
Pac-Man's here on Ghost Island! The Pac-Man! I mean that pathetic fool, trying badly I might add, to impersonate you, who is clearly the real Pac-Man.
I thought you had captured Pac-Man!
We did, see?
I just realized this is the only appearance of the traditional ghost. So yeah, Pac-Man has kidnapped his family to steal his birthday party, so now it's up to Pac-Man to save his family.
Won't happen again.
You idiots! My plans are already in motion! Pac-Man cannot be allowed to crash my party! Find him and destroy him!
Anyway, so in order to get to Pac-Man, Pac-Man needs to go through 6 areas of Ghost Island. And I have to say, this game has a lot of varieties in settings. There are about 6 locations in this game, which are Pirate Land, Egyptian Land, Space Land, Carnival Land, a factory, and a haunted mansion. The Pirate area is a nice little tutorial area to tell you what you're going to be doing in this game. There's various cannibals to avoid, enemies to attack, and special collectibles. You'll also learn that pellets can also help Pac-Man traverse through the area, similar to Sonic's Lightspeed Dash. The Egyptian levels are big labyrinths that you need to avoid. It's very dark, there's booby traps everywhere, and it's connected to a mine. In Spaceland, you need to be careful where you're standing, as there's various holograms you need to stand on and try to activate. Ending things off with this cool little Galaga section. The Carnival area is just a really fun playhouse. You're constantly going up and down on these various rides, although the wheel area can be a bit jank at times. The factory is very interesting because there's various areas you need to avoid, as this place is very unstable. You also need to swim a lot, as these sewers are pretty much massive mazes. I wonder what stuff they make in here. And finally ending things off is the Haunted Mansion. This place is very haunted, as there's ghosts everywhere, and you need to use these coffins to jump over, which is honestly a really nice way to go out with this game. Although jumping on these clouds feel a bit finicky because they're pretty much 2D sprites. And since Pac-Man's going to be a platformer now, he's going to need new moves to take advantage of these various levels. Since Pac Man originated in an arcade where all he just does is run around and try to eat pellets, in this game they give him more moves to take advantage of his shape. For one, Pac Man can do this special ground pound move that works exactly like Sonic Adventure, where when Sonic ground pounds, he can get through higher places. This is very useful when dealing with enemies. Pac Man can also do this special rev roll where he charges up and then rolls like a ball. And finally, he can throw pellets that he collected throughout the area. And I learned by accident that if you grab about 10 of them, you can do the special charge move as well, that I used about maybe 1 time, and that was probably the final boss. But yeah, pellets make a return to this game, alongside with other familiar elements from Pac Man. Since they converted Pac Man into a 3D platformer, a lot of Pac Man trademark elements became collectibles, like fruit for example. You're going to need various fruit to open certain doors. And just like Donkey Kong, you can find letters that spells out Pac Man throughout the worlds. These unlock special bonus levels you can play. But the main collectible you need to be looking out in each world are the keys. Keys are essential for beating Pac Man World because you need them to unlock the cages to release your family. Wait, Pac Man has a daughter? Now the final element returning for Pac Man are the power pellets, and there is multiple this time. The first one pretty much turns Pac Man into Metal Mario, which makes him very durable and sink underwater to get collectibles in these chests. The second one, and the most situational one that is honestly very useful, is that you can upgrade your ground pound move to just Shockwave. The issue is that this thing is not even useful at all. Like, I cannot think of one area that this was useful at. At least the effects on Pac Man looks cool, so there's that. And the final power pellet works pretty much exactly like the original Pac Man. Just eat it and the ghosts will turn blue so Pac Man can munch them. Although ghosts aren't the only enemies in this game, because throughout the game you'll have a variety of enemies attacking Pac Man, such as skeleton ghosts, mummies, robots, and aliens. Ghosts, on the other hand, are honestly kind of scarce throughout the game. You're able to find the ghosts in certain areas, like when things get more maze-like. Speaking of mazes, throughout the game you'll unlock these special Galaga doors, which leads you to new mazes. So you're pretty much playing like new Pac Man levels. Now that would sound cool, but my issue is that these mazes are just pretty slow compared to the original Pac Man arcade. So a lot of times I just avoid them because they're just boring in my opinion. And you need to complete them once you enter, because if you die in this level, you'll lose a life. And honestly, that's just really dumb. They should have made it something like a Crash Bandicoot bonus level, where if you die, you don't lose a life because it's a bonus area. I feel like they should reward you with lives if you're going through with these things. Like, this game is not the easiest game in the world or the hardest game in the world. It's just a decently good challenge, in a way. The level design in this game is pretty solid throughout, though the Egyptian level can be a bit rough in my opinion. I don't know, something just doesn't click with me in this area. When I first started the game, I thought the first two areas were pretty fine, but it did get a lot better around the carnival area. Like, this is easily my favorite area of the game. And just like Crash Bandicoot 2 and Warp, you can actually choose your own levels, like you don't have to play them in order. Like, you could do World 3 first and then World 2 second, which is honestly pretty cool in my opinion. Although I personally just do them in order anyway. But the choice is there, so I'll give them that. Now, I do have my positives for the game, but I also have my issues throughout the game. Now, I said before that the Egyptian level wasn't winning me, but when I played the boss level, holy crap! Anubis Rex is probably one of the worst bosses I've ever played in a platformer. It starts out pretty fine with this fun little chase section, but when you get to the second part, holy crap, I did not enjoy this. So you need to spin these 4 pillars to open this guy's weakness, but the issue is, gradually this guy will just keep throwing stuff at you, and you need to avoid. And this really emphasizes the fact that Pac Man, despite controlling pretty good throughout the game, can feel a bit jank at times. When Pac Man tries to rev roll and tries to jump out of it, he jumps a shorter distance than he usually does. This caused me to die multiple times throughout this boss. So thank God they're going to be fixing this in the remake, because this ain't fun. Other than that, the boss fights in this game were pretty okay. Although this Galaga section can just drag on a bit. Now for the presentation, honestly for a PS1 game, this looks pretty solid. It's bright, cartoony, colorful, and it fits Pac Man really well. And the music in this game is really top notch. I really love the jazzy feel to it. The world map area has this really catchy tune to it. And overall, it's just a really good soundtrack, although for the boss fights, there is a real glitch that makes them play a different song. But with that out of the way, it's time to wrap up this story. So once Pac-Man saves his family, it's time for him to confront Talkman, this mechanical doppelganger of Pac-Man.
You've interfered with my plans for the last time, Pac-Man!
Now this is probably the best boss fight in the entire game. Although that's not saying much because we had stuff like this. But I really think so, because since Talkman is an evil doppelganger of Pac-Man, he also shares the same moves as him. So he's pretty much attacking you with the moves you've been doing throughout the entire game, which is a really cool concept. It's a really nice way to go out for this game. After all that, Talkman goes down, revealing that a mysterious little ghost has been controlling the entire time. Which ends things off with the funniest ending scene I've ever had in a game.
It's so unfair. You ruined everything. Nobody loves a ghost!
Pac-Man just showed no mercy with this little guy. For all the hell he went through with this entire game, I don't blame him. So yeah, that was Pac Man World, and overall it was a really good and solid PS1 platformer. And this game led to various sequels and spin-offs. Although it did lay dormant for about a decade, it's finally coming back with a full-on remake of Pac Man World. It's really cool seeing another remake of Pac Man World 1. Yes, I said another remake, because this is actually not the first remake of Pac Man World, because there was actually another remake years ago. It was a portable remake similar to Mario 64 DS, but unlike that game, it was not on the DS, but on the Game Boy Advance, which is a console that is not known for 3D games. Well, it can do 3D, but it's pretty rare to see a 3D GBA game. And the first thing you boot up while playing it is a bunch of Pog Ghost. DSi games. Well, this game ain't no DSi game. You can't even play GBA games on the DSi. Well, the opening cutscene is still the same, albeit in slideshow form. The background is almost something out of MS Out of all the things that get recreated in the cutscenes, it's just this face, and it just fades to black. Anyway, now here's the big question. How do you fit a PS1 platformer on the GBA? Oh god. So first things first, they converted Pac Man 1 into an isometric 3D platformer. And it works, I guess, but this is no Spyro Season Vice. I really don't have anything else to say about this because it's just Pac Man World on the GBA. It looks fine enough, but depth perception is going to be a real pain in the butt here. I don't know, just play the PS1 version or wait for the remake if you're curious. And speaking of the remake, I am really happy that they're actually doing this again. Even though the Pac Man World 1 is not my favorite game in the series, it's just really cool to see another Pac Man World entry in a really long time. And based on the previews I see, they're doing more than just a simple one-to-one remake. They're reimagining this game, and seem to be fixing a lot of the level design of this game, which is really cool to see. Usually when it comes to remakes like this, they just keep the problems with the level design intact, but here they're actually improving the level design, which will probably make this the definitive way to play Pac Man World 1. And hopefully they can follow up with a remake of Pac Man World 2, because that is my favorite game in the series. And that's going to be the next video, so when we come back, we're going to be talking about Pac Man World 2. Probably one of the best platforming sequels I've ever played. When Pac Man World released, it was considered a financial success. And of course, since it's a late 90s / early 2000s platformer, that means a sequel is that followed. But unlike the first game where it was a PS1 exclusive, this game is going to be multi-platform, which explains why Pac Man World 2 is the most talked about in the series. And this is the game I personally grew up with. I haven't played Pac Man World 1 until around 2011, and I have yet to play Pac Man World 3, well, by the time I'm recording this. But anyway, so the game starts with the 4 classic ghosts goofing around in Pac-Town. And I've got to say, I've seen this opening cutscene so many times, you will not believe it. Mostly because 5-year-old me thought this scene was funny. I don't know why, that always just gives me a chuckle. Anyway, so once they've reached the center of the town, they start plucking fruits from the tree. But these aren't normal fruits, they are powerful golden fruits to keep this monster at bay. And with all the fruits removed from the tree, this massive ghost named Spooky has been freed. Spooky then promised the ghost that he'll get rid of all the Pac people if they scatter the fruit around the world. The next morning, Professor Pac then tells Pac-Man about the crisis, and now it's Pac-Man's job to travel throughout the world to get golden fruits back and defeat Spooky. So for the gameplay, Pac-Man still retains his moves from the previous game. He can butt bounce to get into higher reaches, and he can rev roll. And the controls this time feels a lot more refined compared to Pac Man World 1. Everything just feels a lot more snappy, but they removed the move where he can throw pellets around. This time the pellets are pretty much just collectibles as well. Or when you're trying to do the returning light speed move from Pac Man World 1, where Pac-Man flies around a trail of pellets. The only new move Pac-Man has is the special air kick move, which can get really fun to use in the later levels. It is also the only move that Pac-Man does in Smash Bros. That's from Pac Man World, which is honestly a really good reference to Pac Man World. And with that, I should also mention that the level design in this game is a lot bigger compared to Pac Man World 1. With the first game, it was pretty much just a side-scroller with a 3D view. Think about like Crash Bandicoot, but instead of going forward, you're going to the side. But in Pac Man World, you have a lot more variety in level design. And the best part is that everything feels very cohesive. So instead of the first game where Pac-Man's traveling through Ghost Island to save his family, this time he's traveling through his homeland to get the golden fruit back. And this game has more of an adventure feel compared to the first game where you're just going through level by level. Instead of choosing what levels you want to do like Crash Bandicoot, you're going through a gradual world map. I love the little details where every time you enter a new level, there's a unique animation in the loading screen. That's nice. It really makes this game feel more lifelike, like you're actually traveling through Pac-Man's home. Now in this game, there's 6 areas with 3 levels each. Paradise Meadows is a nice tutorial area to give you the shots on what you're going to be doing in this game. Tree Tops is a really fun area, where you're trying to climb up these giant trees and bouncing around everywhere. In Snow Mountains, they try to do something very unique for each level. In the first level, you're trying to climb up this giant mountain. There's ice everywhere, and it's very easy to fall off. The second level, you're trying to avoid a giant avalanche, kind of like Crash Bandicoot. And for the third level, you're skating down this mountain. It's really fun and energetic, especially when trying to collect everything. But I'll get to that later. The volcano area has the hardest platforming in the entire game. It has really tight platforms, and you need to be very careful on where you land. After this, Pac-Man needs to head to Ghost Island, so in order to do that, he needs to swim. And honestly, this might as well be an auto-scroller because you're just pretty much just dodging everything. And I am not a fan of auto-scrollers. And then finally, we have Ghost Island, where Pac-Man needs to traverse through the land. But unlike the first game, there's no Pirate Land, there's no Carnival, there's no Space Land, it's just a spooky swamp. It's still a nice way to go out for this game, but still, it's kind of strange. Now, for the presentation. This game looks really good. For a 6th gen game, this looks very lively. I'll give Pac Man World 1 credit for better variety, but Pac Man World 2 is kind of like Mario Sunshine, where they made the entire world feel like a lively place. Like Pac-Man is traveling from his own hometown to a freaking mountainside. And the music in this game is very interesting. As I said in my Deltarune video, this game uses a style of music called leitmotif, where for every world, the music for each level is the same but remixed. Now returning from Pac Man World are the collectibles. We don't have the DK letters returning, but we do have all the fruits returning. And this time, they have a chart telling you how many fruits are in the level. However, the number of fruits in each level is staggering. I wouldn't say it's Crash 4 levels of bloated, but it is kind of up there. Especially considering that pellets this time are considered collectibles as well. Now another returning element from Pac Man World 1 is the power-up system. Now, it's a lot more scarce compared to the first game, where there's only the metal power-up and the power pellets. Although the power pellets feel a lot more frequent compared to the first one, where I thought that in Pac Man World 1, the ghost felt a bit scarce. Although they do return in certain areas, like when things get more maze-like, but they also appear in some of the platforming sections, alongside with brand new enemies throughout the game. So unlike Pac Man World 1, where the enemies feel supernatural, the enemies in this game feel a lot more grounded, I should say. You have stuff like these terrifying monsters and these goats that do the same rev roll as Pac-Man does. Although for the second world, there are no enemies except for the ghost. This time it's mostly focused on hazards such as buzzsaws and flames. Why the hell did I say buzzsaws like that? But it does get more supernatural in the final worlds when you have skeletons and bats. Oh, on that note, I really like the little details they have for the ghosts in each world where they have simple costumes. The first game had that too, that I forgot to mention. I find that really cute. And I should also mention that unlike the first game where they just chase Pac-Man, they'll actually throw stuff at Pac-Man as well. And then finally I should also mention the final collectible, these Galaxian medallions. Though they act a bit differently because in the first game you have to collect them and enter a door, this time they're just out of the open and you enter a maze. Now these are a massive step up compared to the first one, because I always find the first one a bit slow and boring in my opinion, but these feel a lot more fast paced. And the best part is that you don't actually lose lives when you die in this section. When you die in this section, you just don't get the collectible, which is a great improvement. Honestly, this game overall is just extremely well made and polished. Now even though I do really like this game, there are some moments in this game where I don't really like. First off, the bosses. Now for the first boss, it's pretty good. You're pretty much fighting this giant mechanical frog by Blinky. No, that can't be right. Okay, for some reason, they swapped the character's name for Blinky and Clyde. But that doesn't matter right now. So for the first boss fight, it's pretty much a giant fight of this mechanical frog. You pretty much attack his tongue and his uvula. But for the next few boss fights for the ghost, they are pretty much the same thing but a simple reskin. Although for Clyde's case, he's pretty much the most annoying because his attacks pretty much knocks Pac Man off the ring and such. And in order to get to Clyde, you need to rev roll across this ramp. And for one of them, it's really picky on where you have to roll it to. And speaking of rev rolling, screw Volcano Panic. There's just this one section where it gets very irritating for me. So in this section, you need to rev roll across this ramp and get to this pillar, right? Well, every time I rev roll, I sometimes miss it or grab onto the ledge. But for some reason, the ledge grabbing in this section is complete ass. Because since this is a pillar that falls, Pac-Man's ledge animation will just keep him going onto the ledge, which caused me to die multiple times. And another section is that you need to grab this middle power-up to go through the lava. But jumping is very janky because the lava is pretty much like Huddy. But other than that, Pac Man World 2 level design is very strong throughout. It's pretty challenging but not too hard, well excluding the volcano section. And overall, it's just a really great package. But if you really do want to challenge yourself, you can always go for the medallions, which unlocks arcade machines to play older Pac-Man titles, which is a really fun incentive to go out and get the medallions. But anyway, so I finally got the final golden fruit and it's time to wrap up this story. So once Pac-Man collects everything, he rushes to Ghost Island. After skating through the spooky boardwalk and going through the caves, he finds himself in a mysterious maze, home to the heart of Ghost Island, Wormwood, who is the brother of the golden tree that sealed up Spooky. He challenges Pac-Man to solve his maze to get to the center, and once he did, he just freaking dies. Pac-Man freaking killed this tree by a heart attack, which enraged Spooky to send off to Pac-Land. With no time to spare, Pac-Man returns the golden fruit to the tree, which suit Pac-Man up in this golden armor. The golden armor does nothing. Well, that was anticlimactic. So throughout the boss fight, you need to attack Spooky once he cools down. He either shoots projectiles or sends a fiery trail. If we're running low on health, trying to attack the enemies because they'll give you some health. I really like this boss fight. It's a great way to send off this game. It's really challenging, and the best part, it's freaking original. This is really amazing. And once you finally defeat him, it is done. I always thought that scene looked really cool. But anyway, so the Pac People celebrates Pac-Man's victory over Spooky, and as for the ghost...
I knew we couldn't take Pac-Man. Did he say that we'd free him again? Uh-oh. Let's get out of here.
Oh god, that's kind of messed up. Like, the dog's mouth is just holding the ghost remains. And that concludes Pac Man World 2. And overall, I still really love this game. This is easily my favorite Pac-Man game of all time, period. It may have some issues there and there, but overall, it's just a really great game. And this is one of the games I used to play a lot when I was little. When I think of Pac-Man, I just think about this world right here. Now, since that we're at it with Pac Man World 2, let's talk about the GBA version. So I said in my Pac Man World 1 video that the GBA version of Pac Man World was pretty much a remake. But for this, it's pretty much its own game with different level designs. And yeah, it's pretty much like Pac Man World 1 on GBA. It's a isometric 3D platformer. Although I do question is that since this game came out before the GBA remake, I don't know why they could have just used the stylized look for this, because this looks very appealing. Although for the opening, it's just slideshows of the opening cutscene from the GameCube game. Although this does look more appealing than the traced look they had in the GBA remake. I honestly say check this game throughout, it's pretty solid. Although beware, this is one of those games that require a password system. So yeah, Pac Man World 2, overall, a great package. If there's one game I recommend out of any of the Pac Man World games, it's easily this one. Now, for the next time we're here, we're going to be talking about Pac Man World 3. Now, this is going to be unknown territory for me because I have never played this game before. The only thing I know about it is that it's the most mixed game in the series, so it's going to be very interesting. Pac Man World 1 and 2 were games that I really loved when I was little, and still love to this very day. They may have several flaws there and there, but I still think they are very strong platformers, especially Pac Man World 2. I even consider Pac Man World 2 my favorite Pac-Man game of all time, next to the original Pac-Man arcade. But despite me really liking the Pac Man World games, I've never actually played the third installment in the series. So while I was doing the Pac Man World Marathon, I was curious on how well the third entry holds up. Now before I start doing the video, I think it's appropriate to talk about the development history of this game. I did kind of skimmed over it during my Pac Man World 1 video, but here I think it's way more important. So if you don't know, Pac Man World 3 was originally going to be another Pac-Man title called Pac Man Adventures. This game was supposed to be a dark reboot of the series, where Pac-Man has to explore various alien worlds and such. This concept didn't get any far, so they had to rework it into a Pac Man World title. And unlike the first two games where it was made in-house by Namco Home Tech, this was made by Blitz Games, a studio known for when companies need a licensed game, they'll hire Blitz Games. But anyway, so the game starts off with Pac-Man's 25th birthday. A nice little callback to the first game where they were trying to celebrate Pac-Man's 20th anniversary.
Did someone say cake? Cherry meringue sugar stuffed power pellet à l'orange? You shouldn't have.
Well, that was unexpected. So in this game, Pac-Man now has a voice. He kinda did speak in the first game, but it was mostly... But anyway, so while Pac-Man is lamenting on how old he's getting, he then spontaneously teleports everywhere, leading him to this mysterious junk heap. Him teleporting was the cause of the returning Orson from the first game. Now if you don't know who Orson was, he was the guy who piloted the Talkman robot, and the guy that Pac-Man showed no mercy to. I just freaking love that scene, But anyway, so Orson needs Pac-Man's help to defeat this mad science named Irwin, who's trying to collapse the spectral realm into Pac-World. And alongside that, Irwin has kidnapped both Inky and Blinky while Pinky and Clyde are missing. And so Pac-Man needs to team up with the Ghost to save both Pac-World and the spectral realm. Now this game is mostly focused on both Pac-Man and Orson, and honestly it's really entertaining just to see them banter with each other. Eventually when Pac-Man meets Clyde, again with the name changes, I don't really care. But anyway, the highlight for the conversations is easily with Pac-Man and Clyde. You can tell that they have years of chemistry, with my favorite lines being this.
Excuse me, Munchie?
Did I hear something, tiny squeak?
Yeah, the big red ghost gets himself all caged up so the yellow fella gets the mark. Go on then, Munchie, mark away.
Aw, don't take it like that. It's not like I find it funny or anything, Clyde. Well, not much, only a little. Are you okay, Clyde?
All right, that's it. I don't need rescuing. Nope, leave me here. I'll take dignity over freedom any day.
I don't know why, that scene just makes me laugh. Now for the gameplay, it's pretty much the same as the first two games. Pac-Man can jump, ground pound, and rev roll. Pac-Man can grab fruit and do this chain pellets. And yeah, it's pretty much the same as the first two games. However, the changes do come in for some of the moveset, like the butt bounce for example. Unfortunately, they nerf Pac-Man's butt as he does not jump higher once you do it. This time, it's mostly used to attack enemies, as they converted the butt bounce into a 3-attack combo. Not only that, but they gave Pac-Man a 3-punch combo as well. That is because, unlike the first two games, this game has a combat feature. Now throughout the game, you'll find yourselves in different arenas trying to fight numerous enemies. They mostly go down the same, just try to punch and win. Power-ups return as well, including the metal power-up, but unlike the first two games where it's used to go underwater, this is mostly used to be invincible. The electric pellet makes Pac-Man go, whoa, whoa! Yeah, it electrocutes enemies, and the next pellet gives Pac-Man a trail behind him, and when he makes a circle around enemies, it'll cause this explosion. Coincidentally, Sonic's gonna have this moveset as well in the upcoming Sonic Frontiers game, and I cannot wait for that game. And the final pellet is the butt bounce, where Pac-Man does his massive shockwave. And honestly, I'm just gonna cut to the chase. These sections are honestly kind of boring. I thought they were fine in the first sections, but they eventually just drag on with more enemies just coming and coming. Not only that, but there's these sections where you need to fight spectral monsters. Now, unlike the first two games, ghosts technically don't make an appearance in this. These spectral monsters are the replacements for Ghost. Even though they go down the same by eating a power pellet, they are much more aggressive compared to Ghost. And I've got to say, these are my least favorite sections of the game. They're just very dull and tedious. Pac-Man eats a bit slower compared to the previous games, which wouldn't sound bad, but it adds up really quickly. And you better make sure they eat a power pellet right after they leave the portal, because if you eat a power pellet and they're still in the portal, they will not turn blue. And at worst, you need to find a power pellet in this big area because they're spread out. This honestly ain't fun. I cringe every time I see that portal opens up because I have to go through this dull process again. And say what you want about the button mashy combat system, but at least it gave you a bit more engaged because you do more than just punch and kick. And they give you power-up system to make the combat system go faster. But for this, you need to go through a very slow process to get the power pellets and eat the ghost. And that's really bad considering that this is Pac-Man, a guy that is known for eating ghost. But not everything is doom and gloom about this game, because there's some stuff I do like about it, like the platforming for example. It's honestly really solid. It's not as good as the second game, but for what it is, it's honestly pretty good. Pac-Man can swing on poles, wall jump, and even climb. These are pretty good additions to the platforming. Although I think I should mention about the game's length. Now, unlike the previous games where there was around 24 levels each, Pac-Man World 3 has 15 levels. However, the levels are significantly longer compared to the first two games. Because when you finish a level in Pac-Man World 2, for example, it would probably take around like 4 or 5 minutes. Pac-Man World 3's levels takes around 40 or 50 minutes, which makes this game the longest Pac-Man World game in the series. Now I personally wouldn't mind the levels being around 50 minutes long, but considering that platforming is alongside with other stuff like the combat system and the ghost eating, yeah, it kind of drags a bit. And as for the presentation, I'm honestly kind of mixed with this. So unlike the cartoonish variety of Pac-Man World 1 and the lively atmosphere World 2, Pac-Man World's style is mostly putting Pac-Man in a dystopian world. Like, there's literally no one here besides monsters. It just feels very isolated in this game. And when I just go to the mountainside and it just has this cold breeze as this empty windmill village is just... ugh. And another section where you're traveling through this abandoned city. It's literally a ghost town. This feels more isolated than Hollow Knight. But the difference is, Hollow Knight's isolation and atmosphere just feels beautiful, as you're trying to travel through this dark world while hearing nothing but the atmosphere. But in Pac-Man World 3, this feels unintentionally isolated. And as I said before, this was intentionally a different game, and you can really tell it was. This game feels like it's trying to be a new IP while being a new entry at the same time. However, for what we've got right here, I honestly think it's pretty solid, with the mountain views having really nice rich of colors for a world that's very empty. My favorite setting of this game is easily the Spectral Realm, which tells its own story. It is the home of the ghosts, and the world changes constantly depending on interpretations. And so why the Spectral Realm constantly changes is that it's based on Irwin's tampering and Pac-Man's view of Ghost. But the best thing about the presentation is easily the dialogue, because oh my god, the dialogue in this game is just so good, it's just unbelievable. With a lot of sections giving me good chuckles.
Frankly, you could do with the exercise, Pac-Man. You're starting to look even more spherical than usual.
Hey, Miss Pac-Man likes me cuddly, okay? Those things are scary. Can I go home now?
Yes, they are. No, you can't. Oh, I'm detecting a rise in energy in your sector, Pac-Man.
Details of my sector's energy should be between me and Miss Pac. Thank you very much.
Man, my readings suggest a nearby ghost to rescue. Either that, or I have spaghetti sauce in my monitor.
Great, so you couldn't just port me straight to it, could you? Oh no, it's much more fun to see poor Pac Man bounced around like a big yellow ball. Oh no! It's a huge, immense, gigantic bonus! I mean bomb! It's a good job you didn't warn me about this, Orson. I'd have panicked!
And as for the music, it's alright. And even if the music's great, I'm barely gonna hear it because for some reason, there's just no music playing a lot of times. Oh, perfect timing. So in Pac Man World 3, Pac-Man's not the only playable character in this game. Because throughout the game, you'll be able to play as both Clyde and Pinky. After you save Pinky from this thing, she's able to materialize platforms for Pac-Man. And for Clyde, he's more relegated to combat sections where you need to fight a swarm of ghosts. And I find it funny is that it's more fun to play as Clyde to get rid of ghosts than Pac-Man. Well, I mean, it's still not fun, it's just meh. I should just say more bearable? But anyway, so for the—
If it didn't need a pilot to be functional, I'd adopt it as my very own son this second.
In you go, and don't mess this up. Shotgun! Never thought you and me'd both be on the same side of a power pellet, Munchie. Guess this is pretty historic.
I'm happy for you. Keep your eyes on the road there, Pokey.
And besides that amazing cutscene right there, there's really not that much to talk about. It's just pretty much button mashing again. But instead of hitting one button, you're hitting two buttons for each arms. I honestly forgot about the Talkman sections because it happens in the first part and then doesn't happen until the near end of the game. And honestly, with everything I talked about, I think it's time to wrap things up. So throughout the final sections of the area, Pac-Man needs to board up Irwin's ship. Here, he finds himself with a resistance fighter. And I've gotta say, this is probably the funniest section in the game in my opinion, just hearing them banter with each other. With Orson slowly getting tired of this guy's BS.
I saved the world once. No, you didn't. Shut up.
Eventually, it turns out that this guy was pretty much just the janitor. But despite this, Pac-Man does consider him a hero because he did help him get this far. Which honestly I really like, it really shows how nice of a person Pac-Man is. Now despite him taking down all of Irwin's siphons, the Spectral Realm is still collapsing. And with no time to spare, Pac-Man rushes off to find Irwin.
Great. Yep. Excellent start. Thank you. I'm gonna need a bigger power pellet.
And now it's time for the final battle. Now I did skim over the boss fights in this game, mostly because there really isn't any boss fights. There's only about 2 boss fights in the entire game, and they are pretty much the same thing. Basically, Pac-Man needs to revel these what the f***? Once Pac-Man has risen all the crystals, Irwin's shield will go down, giving Pac-Man a chance. Once Irwin's robot goes down, Pac-Man has won as he's cornered Irwin.
Why are you looking at me like that?
Always keep your feet on the ground, Irwin.
I always hated yellow. Mother!
Ah, home sweet. Hi, honey. I'm home.
Pac-Man has finally returned home for his birthday party, but alongside with the ghost. Since Orson's gonna need time to clean up the Spectral Realm, they need to find a place to stay. And since they helped Pac-Man save the world, I'm pretty sure he would be lenient.
What's for dinner?
You are.
Or maybe not.
You heard the lady. I believe now's the part where you run.
Oh, come on, Munchie. You don't want to eat me. But think of all we've been through together. Okay, bad example.
Well, that's what they get for helping Pac-Man save the world, I guess. Honestly, this time I just feel bad for the ghost. Because at least in World 1, Orson did try to kill Pac-Man and kidnap his entire family. And in World 2, they freed a powerful ghost that will get rid of everyone. But anyway, so that concludes Pac Man World 3. And I've got to say, out of all the games I've played so far for the Pac-Man series, this is probably the toughest I could think of when it comes to making an opinion. This game was literally all over the place when it comes to gameplay styles and such. When it focuses on the platforming and exploration, I really like it. It's just really fun to find collectibles and explore these vast worlds, even if it does seem a bit out of place for Pac-Man. But once I see a bunch of robots coming out or these portals spawning, that's when my enjoyment for this game drops. This game didn't make me as frustrated what happened in stuff like in World 1 or 2, but stuff like the ghost eating, it just drags on. Like the brawler and ghosting sections really drop this game for me personally. When this game has its highs, it really has its highs, but when the game has its lows, it really has its lows. But honestly, I really say go check this out if you want to. Mostly because it's just worth it just to hear these funny dialogue sections. Which is honestly my favorite part of the game because I just really like the chemistry of Pac-Man when he talks to other people. And while we're at it, why don't we take a look at the DS version of this game? I honestly saw my friends play this game once when I was little. And I was surprised to see that this was the full Pac-Man World 3 but on DS. Which is really impressive because you rarely see any full 3D games on DS. The only down points of this game is that they cut down all the dialogue in this game, so you're pretty much going through the entire game silent. So yeah, just stick with the console games. And that concludes the Pac-Man World series. And I've got to say, the Pac-Man World games are probably the best spin-off series from Pac-Man yet. These games always try to do their own things and try to do something that sticks out. Which was kind of a shame considering that it took about nearly a decade for Pac-Man World to return. But besides 3, there was actually one more Pac-Man World game that came out between then, which is Pac-Man World Rally, which is a simple kart racer similar to Mario Kart. And honestly, I say check this game out, it's really fun. It includes all the villains from each game. And the music of this game is just really catchy. It honestly feels like a nice little goodbye letter to the Pac-Man World series. Similar how Crash Team Racing was a swan song for Naughty Dog's Trilogy. And after Pac-Man World Rally, Pac-Man had a bit of a soft reboot of the series. With, of course, the Ghostly Adventures with the interesting introduction scene. And afterwards, they kinda did a bit less with Pac-Man after the Ghostly Adventures failed. Pac-Man still had games there, and they are mostly refined versions of the traditional arcade games. And these are really fun, to be honest. Like, Pac-Man Championship Edition 2 is just really addicting. And besides that, Pac-Man was pretty much relegated to merchandise that day, and just Bandai Namco as a mascot. Until this year, once they released the Pac-Man Museum Plus, a sequel to the Pac-Man Museum for the Xbox 360, and then a few months ago, they announced that they're finally bringing back Pac-Man World in a remake. I was just really amazed when I saw it because it really didn't feel real. Like, it's a new Pac-Man World release, like, it was just really surreal. We'll return to the Pac-Man World series once Pac-Man World Repack released next month. The Pac-Man World series was a small series from the Pac-Man franchise. These games put Pac-Man into the world of 3D platforming with 3 grand adventures, with each game trying something unique. The first game had Pac-Man traveling through Ghost Island to save his family that were taken by this mysterious doppelganger named Pac Man. The second game had Pac-Man traveling out the land to find the golden fruit to stop this evil ghost. And Pac-Man World 3 had him going through mysterious worlds to stop this evil scientist named Irwin. Unfortunately with World 3, this was a different case compared to the last two, as this was supposed to be a different project that became the third entry, and unfortunately it would be the final game in the series, excluding a kart racer game. I've always wanted Pac-Man World to return, but it really seemed unlikely, especially when they had the soft reboot of the series with the Ghostly Adventures and such. However, starting in 2017, there were more and more classic franchises making a massive comeback in some way. Mario, of course, has his Grand 3D Adventures along with Sonic, and with that year, they had the return of Crash Bandicoot, and then next year they had Spyro. And then months went on, more and more franchises came back from the dead, including now to this day with Rayman coming back for Mario & Rabbids. And so with all these classic series returning, all eyes were hoping for the Pac-Man World series to get a revival as well. And as of 2020, Namco has been recently re-releasing a lot of their older games. With this year, they released a massive bombshell that they're actually bringing back Klonoa. Which was really exciting because I really liked Klonoa 1 and really wanted to play Klonoa 2, so that's great. But for Pac-Man World, in late June, Nintendo released a Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase. And in that Direct, they announced a massive bombshell that Namco is remaking the original Pac-Man World. Which really blew my mind because I always wanted a comeback for the Pac-Man World series, and to see that finally happen on Switch was just really exciting. So exciting that I spent the entirety of July making a retrospective on all the Pac-Man World games. With this game, we don't have Namco Hometech anymore, since that hasn't been a thing for a really long time. This time we have Now Productions working on the remake. I was not familiar with this studio, so I decided to look up and realize, I actually played some of their games. This was the studio who works with various companies throughout the years. These are the developers who worked on the Mario Baseball games, for example. They also worked on Sonic Riders and the Klonoa GBA games, so they have a pretty good resume under their belt. This was actually not their first with the Pac Man series, as they were the ones who made the Pac Man Museum compilation earlier this year. And it all leads up to this remake. The hype for this game was really weird. It was announced during the Nintendo Direct, and it kinda stopped after that. Eventually they showed more gameplay of it out of an anime expo of all places. I never expect to be watching an anime expo stream to watch Pac Man. And then a few months later, they just casually released the launch trailer, where they showed the freaking final boss of the game. Like, what? Imagine if Nintendo does that for one of their mainline Mario. Oh. But anyway, this was a game that got me really hyped. It's been so long since we have a Pac Man World game. So to commemorate this special occasion and conclude the Pac Man World Retrospective, I decided to bring in another Pac Man fan.
Hey everyone, Demetri here, and I'm honored to be part of Gold Connor's Pac Man World Repack review. To say I'm a fan of Pac Man would be quite the understatement, because I've been a Pac fan even longer than I've been a fan of Mario. To find a Pac Man fan bigger than I am would be very difficult to do. That is, unless you find Soshi the Yoshi or Tim Christ. But regardless, when I found out that Pac Man World was getting a remake after much fan demand, I was super excited. So the question is Pac back? Or should he just pack his bags?
We'll see, Demetri. We'll see. Well, with out of the way, let's get started. So with this remake, it starts off with the exact same thing, where the family gets kidnapped, but this time it's from the ghost. And I find it funny is that they have a hard time recognizing that that's not Pac Man. Like, come on, it's Pac Man. You should know about Pac Man by now. He's the one who's been eating you for years now. And that's not the only thing that's different. The family itself has changed from the original game as well. Most notably is that Miss Pac-Man has been replaced by this new character named Pac-Mom. So if you don't know, Miss Pac-Man, despite being a Pac-Man character, wasn't necessarily owned by Namco, as Miss Pac-Man was owned by a completely different studio, as Namco was just the publisher for it. Namco was going to buy the rights to Miss Pac-Man until the developers sold it to AtGames. If you don't know what they are a notorious studio that makes really cheap mini consoles, with one of their biggest examples being the Sega Genesis Flashback, where not only it is very poorly designed,
and they sound like ass!
So yeah, since Miss Pac-Man played a large part in Pac Man World, they had to change it in order to make this remake happen. Because who knows when Bandai Namco will get the rights to Miss Pac-Man again. But anyway, so the ghost kidnaps the family, and then Pac-Man realizes that their party has been ruined. I kinda miss how they got kidnapped in the original one, where they get kidnapped by various things that foreshadows the level. Like, for example, when the dog gets kidnapped, it's a mummy that kidnaps him that represents him being trapped in the ruins. Or when Professor Pac got kidnapped, he gets abducted by a UFO that signifies that he's in the space level. But anyway, so Pac-Man gets the invitation to go to Ghost Island, and he heads off. Meanwhile, Talkman tells his frustration to the ghost how much they are doing a bad job with this birthday party. It plays out the exact same thing, except this time they're doing a bit of a Animal Crossing-like gibberish. Overall, it's a really well recreation of the cutscene, but I kinda miss the voice acting in the original.
Oh no, you idiots! I wanted gold streamers and red balloons! The DJ stinks, the banners are crooked, and the cake should be chocolate! You're gonna ruin my party!
Boss!
What do you want?
Pac-Man's here on Ghost Island! The Pac-Man!
But even then, the cutscene is still really good in its own right. It's different, but it's still great. Although a moment is silent of Pac-Man's weird scream. But anyway, so Pac-Man enters Ghost Island and we're off. Holy crap, I can't believe this is happening. But anyway, for the gameplay, it's pretty much identical as the original series. Pac-Man can still run, jump, and butt bounce, and do this little rev roll. And they also added a brand new move exclusive to the remake where Pac-Man can do a little flare jump similar to Yoshi's Island. This also reminds me a bit of Crash 4's double jump, where it's very useful to adjust your platforming. especially when it's the movable platforms, where it's a lifesaver. The other thing I noticed that they changed from the moveset are the pellet bombs, where they're a lot more useful than the original. I always found the original one very situational, but here I end up using it a lot, which is a really nice change, in my opinion. Another thing returning are the power-up system. The metal power-up will turn Pac Man into Metal Pac Man, which is very useful of going underwater. They also added a brand new metal variation of enemies that only Metal Pac Man can defeat, which is honestly good. It gives you a good incentive to get the medal. The second one is this one where Pac Man turns into a literal bomb, which I barely noticed in this game as well. And lastly, we have the power pellets, which plays a different role compared to the original. Demeech?
One of the things that's new in Pac Man World Repack is the way that the power pellets are handled. In the original Pac Man world, Pac Man could obtain a power pellet, but he'd remain the same appearance. But in Repack, Pac Man becomes a gigantic version of Pac Man, similar to how Mario uses the Mega Mushroom. The main difference, however, being that Pac Man uses his classic design. It's really cool to see, and he'll chase the poor ghosts down and eat them alive. Yet again, they went after him on his birthday, so it's hard to feel any sympathy for them.
Yeah, although if I find myself being chased by a giant Pac Man, I would freaking panic as well, because that would be fucking terrifying. But continue.
Once again, you'll be traveling through 6 different areas of the Ghost Island. However, there is a hub world in the game that's brand new with quality of life improvements. There are teleporters added, which really cut down on the pack tracking when you're trying to 100% the game. There are 6 worlds in total, all having really cool theming, but if I had to choose some favorites, it would be the Space World and the Final World. The level design in the game is also excellent. For a 3D platformer, the levels might seem a bit basic. It's definitely a linear 3D platformer with not much exploration, but that doesn't stop the game from having many collectibles. You'll be collecting fruits, Pac-Man letters, as well as Galaxians, which can have you unlock the mazes. These mazes in the game really are nice to have because of the variety, and they play like classic Pac-Man, albeit much easier. It also takes advantage of the giant Pac-Man, so there's a lot of variety here.
Yeah, and what I like too about the maze levels is that they add a quality of life improvement where, if you die, you don't lose any lives. Which frankly was a real annoyment in the original, especially the first one where you're swimming underwater with slow water physics. Now, for the Final Man collectible are the trademark keys. In the original, in certain levels, there is a special key that's used to open a cage for your Pac family. But in the remake, they're in a special door where you need to find a special fruit. So you're pretty much getting a key to get a key. So yeah, overall the gameplay is really spot on in the original, and honestly, it is really refined compared to the original. I really love Pac-Man's control in this game. It's really fun and very snappy. And the level design in this game is pretty good, just like the original. This game can give you a good challenge, but I wouldn't say in the levels of something like Crash Bandicoot or something. Oh, and if you're having trouble with this game, you can also turn on easy mode, which will give out invisible platforms to make things a lot easier. And as for the bosses, well, they pretty much play mostly the same as the original. Although mostly. In the original game, Pac Man mostly appeared in the beginning and end, but here he has a much bigger presence where he activates the boss fight. This really emphasizes how strong Pac Man is, as he can just literally build a robot out of nothing instantly. So the first boss fight plays exactly the same as you try to deflect cannonballs from Windbag. Holy crap, Anubis Rex is actually good now. I hated this boss fight in the original, as it felt very unfair, but here they actually give you a good amount of legroom to play through the game. The Space Student section plays the same, although it's a bit easier compared to the original. The Clown Racing minigame plays exactly the same, although this time you're playing it through first person instead of a bird's eye view.
The one boss that had a significant change has got to be Chrome Keeper. Instead of using the metal power-up to press the buttons to drop something on him, all Pac-Man has to do is grab a metal power-up and do a rev roll to attack. And just like Pac Man, he has a really cool new design. In the original game, he looked a bit goofy, but here, he means business.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that they changed it too, because I found the original version really boring a lot of times, as you're just waiting to get the buttons and such. But here it's a lot more engaging and frantic as he shoots freaking missiles at Pac Man. And now, what would you say about the presentation?
The presentation of Pac Man World Repack looks really good regardless of what platform you're playing it on. I primarily have played it on Switch, but if you play it on PC, it looks great as well. It also is 60 frames per second regardless of what platform you're playing it on. But in the Switch version, you're gonna have to go into settings and change it to performance mode. Why this isn't the default is beyond me. but once that setting's on, you're in for a great time. It really showcases just how well they remade the game. Another thing I like is with the game over screen, Pac-Man's name is changed to Talk Man, which is a really nice detail, and Talk Man's redesign is fantastic. Bandai Namco, if you're watching this, I know you love merchandise, and if you make a Talk Man figure, I will be the first to buy it.
Yeah, I do agree, Talk Man looks really good in this game. In the original, he looks like a little hunk of junk plastered together, but here he's a lot more sleek, he's a lot more menacing. Frankly, I am very impressed in this remake. A lot of remakes usually stumble, but this one really shines and does something what a remake should: improve the original game. The presentation in this game is very stellar. I really like the cute little details like Pac-Man's idle animations and the little ghost costumes they have. However, there's only one problem I have with the remake's presentation. Now, the soundtrack in the original game was pretty good and very catchy a lot of times. However, in the remake, they still use the same soundtrack, but it's very compressed sometimes. It felt like they just downloaded the songs from an online site instead of going for the original composer. On that note, they didn't even credit the original people who worked on this game, by the time I'm making this video, because recently Namco announced that they'll add the credits in later on. But still, it really should have been in the base game, because they're the ones who made the game that they're making it on. But still, overall, Pac Man World Repack has a stellar presentation, and it's really faithful to the original. But anyway, so with everything out of the way, time to wrap up this adventure. So as Pac-Man traverses through the spooky island, he finds himself in the center of the island, which is a haunted mansion. Inside the mansion, Pac-Man finds himself in Talk Man's lair. Talk Man, having enough of Pac-Man's shenanigans, he decides to face off Pac-Man once and for all. And this is the final battle. It plays a lot differently than the original. In the original, it was pretty much Pac-Man versus Pac-Man, as Talk Man can do Pac-Man's moves. The first phase plays exactly like the original, as Pac-Man needs to fight Talk Man, although he is hooking himself with a jetpack this time. But when we get to the second phase, he grabs a metal power-up and turns into Metal Talk Man. The only way to defeat him is to grab the metal power-up as well, as he shoots cannonballs in the background. In the final phase, he grabs 2 power pellets and eats it and turns into Giant Talk Man. The only way to attack him is to stun him by attacking his feet and jumping onto him. And once he goes down, Talk Man has one final blow as he slams Pac-Man into his birthday cake. On top of the birthday cake has a power pellet. Pac-Man eats the power pellet and munches Talk Man down. And just like the original, it reveals that Talk Man is this little ghost named Orson, and he laments why ghosts is never love. And once again, Pac-Man shows no mercy towards Orson. However, that's not the end of this story, because there's something new in Repack. So in the original game, you must save your entire family to fight Talk Man, but in this remake, you don't have to. So in Repack, they tried to do something interesting.
If you 100% the game, you'll get a new ending where Pac-Man forgives Orson, and he lets the original 4 ghosts join his birthday party.
Yeah, and I really like that. It really gives out a new twist to this classic game, where for years we just see Pac-Man just eats Orson. To see that he actually forgives him in this remake is really cool for new fans. And if you're feeling heartless, they still kept the original where he just eats him. So yeah, Pac Man World Repack overall is a really good remake. It is honestly the best way to play the original game, since it's on newer consoles, and it refines a lot of aspects from the original game. And the fact that they fix Anubis Rex automatically makes this the best way to play the original. If you're very curious, you can get on the latest consoles for about $30. Yes, $30 to play this game, and it's honestly a great deal in my opinion, because Pac Man World Repack is honestly a really great 3D platformer. So Dimitri, what do you think about the game?
It is easily one of my favorite Nintendo Switch games, and my second favorite Switch game of the year. The first one going to another circular glutton, who just so happened to be in a game about a forgotten land. But overall, Pac Man World Repack is everything I would like from a remake. The gameplay is refined and has a lot of quality of life improvements. The presentation is a complete overhaul, and this game manages to break the modern remake curse that we've seen in many games. Usually these modern remakes will fail due to a variety of reasons. Funnily enough, these remakes are usually re-breaks, such as in the case of Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl and Sonic Colors Ultimate, but in Pac Man World Repack's case, it is truly a remake. And you know what? Pac is back! I want to see more of this.
Yeah, I really love this new era we're in, where most 3D platformers are coming back with either big remakes or returning brand new entries. With this one being on par with the Crash and Spyro remakes, where Spyro in particular was honestly one of my favorite remakes of all time just because how beautiful it looks. So yeah, I highly recommend trying it out if you're very curious on it. And that'll do it for this compilation. You know, recently I've been going back to playing these Pac Man World games, and honestly my opinion still stands on most of these games. These are fantastic, fun little 3D platformers. I highly recommend trying them out if you're very curious, especially Pac Man World Repack since it's available on modern consoles. But that'll do for today, so thank you for watching, I'll see you later. Bye-bye!